I'd go into the courtroom with a judge, grayer hair than me, and, you know, I'd slam down the visa rules, being like, they're violating the visa rules.
Right.
And, you know, judge whips out his wad of cash, and he's just, you know, the visa what? I mean, a lot of people, like, still, they'd use credit cards, like, kind of, but no, he's operating on cash.
Yeah.
And I'd have to draw, you know, this whole chart out. Here's how the system works and all of that. And, you know, a lot of judges, they'd like it, and they'd be like, oh, wow, I know. But they're like, why do I care? After COVID, it was now they are leaning forward when I'm giving this presentation. It's the same presentation. I've been giving it for 15 years. And they're leaning forward and they're saying, thank you. Like, oh my gosh, wow, I had no idea. No wonder I'm getting jacked.
Yep.
And everybody's getting jacked. Like, yeah, let's sue some people in here. So,
well, I mean, you know, the car associations are cracking down a little bit on it. I mean, they're starting to pass fines off for businesses that aren't doing it the right way. And technically, you know, the way you're supposed to do it is your advertised price needs to be your card price, and then you're discounting off of that, right? But so many businesses do it the other way, where they're
doing it wrong.
Increasing, and then it's a surcharge, and then it becomes a whole problem.
It's a whole problem, and they'll fine you $1,000 for the first one, and they'll be like, fix it.
Yeah.
But in that grace period, they'll come secret shop you 3 more times.
That's right.
And we have one client that we sued Visa over, $70,000 fine for one merchant.
Jeez.
And you can't pass that on to the merchant.
Yeah.
They're out of business.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Payments Experts Podcast, a podcast of Global Legal Law Firm. We hope you enjoy this episode. Very excited today in studio, driving down from Costa Mesa, California. We have Paul Hadfield. Paul, welcome to the Payments Experts Podcast studio. With us is James Huber, managing partner of the law firm. Gentlemen, we're looking forward to a great conversation today.
All right. Paul, thanks for driving down.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us how'd you end up in this wonderful world of payments?
You know, it's actually this is a really funny story. So I was in college, and freshman year, immediately felt like I didn't fit in, and so I started figuring like, well, all right, well, if I'm going to drop out of college, I better have something to tell my parents.
Yeah.
So I answered an ad in a local paper. You know, we're talking 2001. That's where you found jobs in the paper, right? Outside of a grocery store, they had stacks of these like career builder or whatever it is. And I'm just going through the sales section because I'm like, I can sell stuff. And there was an ad that said, you know, make tons of money selling a product to businesses. And so I just called, and they're like, yeah, come on down. And I go into this basement, the basement of like a dental office. And it was this small ISO of First American Payment Systems.
Nice.
Just kind of like figuring stuff out, getting their feet wet. And I sit down at this guy's desk, and he's like, yeah, you sell these products, this payments products, and you get a little bit of money every single month.
Sweet.
And I was like, is that even legal? They're like, yeah. I'm like, I just make the sale and I get money every single month. And they're like, yeah. And they're like, but it's 100% commission. And I'm like, I don't care. Like, let's do it, right? So I call my parents. I'm like, I'm dropping out of school and blah, blah, blah. So anyway.
And they're like, great.
They were not happy.
No, they were not happy.
Yeah, not happy.
Well, they might be smiling now.
What were you studying at the time, Paul? What was your major?
You know, I actually was, I wanted to be in physical therapy because I played sports in high school, had a bunch of knee injuries, loved my physical therapist. And, you know, I grew up with dreams of like being a baseball player. And then in high school, I'm like, well, okay, I'm not going to play pro.
Right.
Thought that I would.
Yeah.
And then like you start playing against like other kids that are really good, and you're like, you're no longer that good.
Right.
You're like, I'm definitely not going pro. But I was like, if I can't play sports, I'd be fun to like work with athletes, right? And so then I get to school, and school never made sense to me. So I'm like, I just want to be a physical therapist, but why do I have to take all this chemistry?
Yeah, why do I have to know math?
Exactly. Like I have to spend 4 years learning chemistry and math and go deep into debt. Like can you just teach me about like
have to fix that knee?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a different podcast though.
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
But that was my introduction into payments, is working for a real small ISO. And then I eventually got to the point where I was like, I can do this on my own, you know.
Right.
I don't need these guys. I had nothing to risk. In my early 20s, you know, my bills were nothing.
Right.
Right. I'm roommate. I got no car payment. I'm like, I can live off peanut butter jelly sandwiches and just go out and sling merchant accounts.
Sweet.
So
And then the rest is history.
yeah, well, the rest is kind of history. I built up an ISO that I sold in 2013, then started another ISO that I actually just sold this at the end of last year.
So your 10-year mark is build it up and sell it. Is that about right?
I don't know, man. You know, I never. It's funny because the first ISO that I sold, I was like, well, that wasn't selling it for me wasn't as fun as building it.
Right.
And so my next ISO, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to build this lifestyle business and eventually pass it to my kids. Right. Mm-hmm. The legal business name is Hadfield Group LLC. And I'm like, I'm going to give this to my kids to do. But things change.
Mm-hmm. When you sold the first time, were you planning on going back? Because I hear a lot of times people are like, I sold, I was going to get out, and then I tried to do some other stuff, and I was just not that good at it.
100%. That's exactly what I did. Mm-hmm. So I've always loved real estate. I wanted to get into commercial real estate. And I was in Chicago, where I lived for years, over a week. And there's some guys I know that run this big real estate fund. And I set up a meeting with them to meet with them. And like, hey, I want to get into commercial real estate. And I have these ideas and blah, blah, blah. And this guy, one of the founders of this company, he's sitting across the table from me and he's like, why would you do that? I'm like, because I'm interested in commercial real estate. He's like, I was a stockbroker. That's where I made my money. And then I went into commercial real estate. He's like, do you know how complicated my life became for so many years? He's like, do you want to do that to yourself?
Right.
And I was like, I don't know. I think so.
I thought I did.
And he goes, let me tell you, he knows my payments background. He was like, let me tell you how valuable your knowledge in the payment space is. He goes, if you came in here today and said, I'm starting a new company and I'm trying to raise money, he's like, I'm going to write you a check right now. Uh-huh. He's like, if you say, I'm going to go buy a commercial property, it's my first one. He's like, I'm not giving you anything.
Right.
I remember walking out of there. I called my wife. I'm like, I think I'm staying in the payments business. I mean, he made a great point. I mean, that specialized knowledge, right? So the whole one of the principles from Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, right? It's like specialized knowledge is a key to building wealth.
Right.
Right. And I've seen that as well in the payments business. I always think of like a pyramid. It's like the longer that you're doing something, the more you're set alone at the top. You've got so much specialized knowledge. It would be a shame to just throw it away.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we run into the same thing. We'll have people call us up and be like, hey, my mom got hit and she lost her leg and this is a total pretend scenario, but you could make a lot of money doing that. And we're going like, no, like throwing that into what we do, it messes our systems up. So we'll be 100%. Interviewing people and they'll be like, hey, I've got this big book of business. Most firms are like, yeah, great. Yeah. We'll take your book of business. We're like, you got to shed all of it. Yeah. Because we do this. Yes. Only. So I totally agree. When you did it the first time and you started out, it's you, your backpack, slanging, wasn't knuckle busters, but you're slanging VX20s. Sure. Yep. Were you doing the leasing model back then where you'd lease them?
A little bit. Yeah. A little bit. Yeah.
That's how I got started. I was doing collections on people that leased 10 VX20s for a single point of sale and were suing them for $140,000. Yeah. It was just good times, good business. We even had a collection department, and these guys, they worked out this little scheme where one guy'd call up and he'd be like yelling at him on the phone, be like, get on the phone. He'd be swearing. This guy was good at it. He'd be like red-faced, blurting out. And then the other guy would come up and be like, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, gotta go. And hung up. And then he'd call him back and he'd be like, I'm so sorry. We just fired Dylan. We're so sorry. And that would work because they'd be like, oh, we got I've heard finally. Yeah. Because these people, you're really good at sales. I'm sure you weren't doing that model. Right. But these guys, they're shuffling the paper around and they get these merchants into it and they're, not that good at business. Small business. Maybe they're great at their little business, but throw anything else in there. Yeah. And that's where we're always going. No, call an attorney when you're negotiating your MPA.
That's right.
Because nobody does. And then you get stuck in arbitration. But anyways, that's how I got started. And then luckily that's gone, even though I really did enjoy that from a dark middle school bully perspective.
Yeah. I mean, there's still equipment leasing out there. It's just not nearly as common. But I mean, as you probably know, there's some large ISOs that still do tons of leasing.
They'll still lease VX20s. I have guys, I was on a call with this guy. He's got a sideways hat on, and he's going like, I don't even care about residuals. We're just still doing the leasing model. And I'm like, who does your collections? No, just kidding. So so you started it the first time, backpack, built it up. What's your playbook? What's your model of success? And, if you don't want to give it away, fine. But obviously not everyone can do it. I tried to start an ISO once, and it was because I had these clients that show up in a Ferrari and Lamborghini. I was like, I'll just do that.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Didn't work.
Well, I think for me, it's changed over the years. Early on in the industry, my key was a great sales team and great support, just tried and true. Mm-hmm. And that was a lot easier to do 15 years ago because I think technology was pretty much similar regardless of who you were, right? It's like you said, the VX520 is like everybody's using a terminal.
Yep.
And cloud-based technology didn't really exist. E-commerce was still kind of in its real early stages.
Yeah.
So it was like the real only differentiators were price, service, and then technology maybe was kind of starting to creep in with some basic things. Yeah. But so if you just had a great sales team, and you learned how to sell and take care of your customers, you could really build a viable business. You can still do that today. It's just gotten a lot harder, right?
It's harder. I mean, back then you're just plucking people that were selling knives.
That's right.
Before,
That's right.
Car dealership guys were great. Jeremy's laughing because I think he used to sell knives.
Cutco?
I used to sell steaks.
Okay, well that's similar.
That's legit. Door to door. You had a cooler, and you'd be like, "Here, you want some?"
It was the truck.
Have you seen those guys that they sell speakers out of their car? Yeah. They see people on the sidewalk and like, "Hey, we have this overflow of speakers, man. You want them at 80% off?" And
did you buy some?
No.
They're garbage.
Oh, man.
They're garbage. Yeah, no name speakers.
Yeah.
Or
they have these big
Boise.
They have these big stories about how they have this whole truck full of speakers.
Yeah, Boise instead of Bose.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so no, I mean, we saw that we were in-house for our first client as they built it from, I think like when we were hired, they had like 12 or 13 people. They'd just grown out of their office. They're like, you take our office. And then they grew to 400 nationwide. And they loved getting sales guys from car dealerships. And that's all they had to do is go, here's a number that's lower than what you got.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
So what's the difference, I guess? So you did that model. What's the difference now? Can you still get somebody selling steaks and teach them how to sell payments?
Yes. I think so. I don't do that. I think it's
you don't recruit from the steak department.
The local steak door-to-door steak company.
Yeah.
I mean, look. I think a great salesperson and a great sales team is something that's always going to be of value for sure. But so over the years, my biggest goal in payments was to, and still is, to never lose a customer. That's how I always look at it, right? Yeah. So how sticky can I make this merchant relationship, right? And I've always tried to treat a merchant relationship more of like a business partner as opposed to like a piggy bank, right? That's a lot of people in the industry. It's like, well, I have this merchant on board. Let me lock them into a contract and then just keep banging them with fees. And if they try to leave,
get them into a merchant cash advance. I remember going to a big merchant. Jeremy, you went with me. We went to a merchant cash advance conference, and we heard the guy, and he's like, "This is just another hook. Get him into an MCA."
That's right.
And then we won't tell you because we're going to get him into 6 more and stack them all up, and then they're out of business.
Yeah.
Which was not the goal.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That was the last conference we went to those.
Yeah. So for me, it's always been, those are consistents. I think a great sales team and great support have always been consistents. But then over the years, especially as time has gone, trying to find the right combination of technology to help that business operate more efficiently.
Right.
Right. And that's the biggest thing today, is that there's so much specialized technology for businesses that if you're just giving them a thing, right, a tool or a piece of technology, and it's not changing the trajectory of their business, right? It's not streamlining things. It's not making their business operate more efficiently. Then like you could still win that merchant,
right?
But it's just a matter of time before they find the thing that's best for them. So to your point, yeah, you can find the steak salesman and he can make some sales, but I think any ISO or any payments business needs to latch on to technology and look at, where is this business going to be in the best place for the next 5 years? What product, what service can I provide them that truly keeps them sticky? Because I've lost plenty of merchants over the years where I had great relationships with them, been providing great service, great support, great pricing, but that they found technology that's just going to be better for their business. And that I started to see that shift probably around like 2016, 2017, where it was like, look, I think we're shifting more towards the technology era than like, hey, I'm just a great local guy with, good rates. And
when did Clover come out? Like right then?
I think Clover came out a little earlier than that. I want to say it was like 2012 or 2013.
But the Clover, as far as machines go, I mean, it's the VX20 of POS machines, right?
Yes.
So if you're selling steaks, you can go sell a Clover to somebody who is just running a terminal, no problem, because they're going, oh, look at that, with spins and all of this. But it doesn't really do what it said we all hoped it was going to do. I mean, look, you still have to use that thing because people, do it. But yeah, I agree that it's not the, next technology. So did you develop technology?
Well, so we actually built a cash discount application on Clover's infrastructure.
Yeah.
And we almost did that. I've never been like a big cash discount proponent.
Yeah.
Putting myself in like a merchant's shoes, I'm like, why wouldn't I just raise my price or whatever? But I think there's a lot of businesses that are real price conscious. They, if you're a burger restaurant, you don't want to have a burger that's $1 more than the one down the street. Nope. People care about that stuff. So implementing cash discounting, that was something that, we had salespeople and ISOs and agents and even merchants coming to us saying, hey, somebody's telling us we can save a ton of money if we do this cash discounting thing, right? So I think the options that existed in the marketplace, I wasn't thrilled with them.
Yeah.
So, it's funny. There's a well-known Clover developer down in San Diego I've seen some other applications they built that have been just phenomenal. And I just cold called them one day and I'm like, hey, would you build an app for us? Mm-hmm. And this is how we want to build it. They're like, yeah, let's do it. So that's kind of how that started. And I think as of today, there's something like 7,000 active users. And most came through word of mouth on that app store. So I think cash discounting is a huge thing because businesses, especially small businesses, they're looking for any edge they can get. Yeah.
And card holders, they don't care. I mean, you're getting hit everywhere. I mean.
Well, look, if we're going to... I hate talking about COVID because like we're so far past that. But if there's one benefit for small businesses that came out of it, it's that consumers are more they're okay with extra fees. They understand it more, right?
And
so when they see these different fees, that's just become more common, right? Because they know small businesses were struggling around that time. Businesses were adding more fees, and now consumers, I think, are more okay with it.
Totally. I mean, we saw the same thing. I tell this story often of I'd go into the courtroom with a judge, grayer hair than me. And, I'd slam down the Visa rules being like, they're violating the Visa rules.
Right.
And, judge whips out his wad of cash and he's just, the Visa what? I mean, a lot of people like still, they'd use credit cards, like kinda, but no, he's operating on cash.
Yeah.
And I'd have to draw, this whole chart out. Here's how the system works and all of that. And, a lot of judges, they'd like it and they'd be like, oh, wow, I know. But they're like, why do I care? After COVID, it was now they are leaning forward when I'm giving this presentation. It's the same presentation. I've been giving it for 15 years. And they're leaning forward and they're saying, thank you. Like, oh my gosh, wow, I had no idea. No wonder I'm getting jacked.
Yep.
And everybody's getting jacked. Like, yeah, let's sue some people in here. So,
well, I mean, the car associations are cracking down a little bit on it. I mean, they're starting to pass fines off for businesses that aren't doing it the right way. And technically, the way you're supposed to do it is your advertised price needs to be your card price, and then you're discounting off of that, right? But so many businesses do it the other way, where they're
doing it wrong.
Increasing, and then it's a surcharge, and then it becomes a whole problem.
It's a whole problem, and they'll fine you $1,000 for the first one, and they'll be like, fix it.
Yeah.
But in that grace period, they'll come secret shop you 3 more times.
That's right.
And we have one client that we sued Visa over, $70,000 fine for one merchant.
Jeez.
And you can't pass that on to the merchant.
Yeah.
They're out of business.
Yeah.
So the ISOs are just eating it.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's brutal.
Yeah, and a lot of the processors and ISOs pass it down to their sub ISOs and agents.
Oh yeah.
And
well, the way they find the bank, this is how they're getting around it too, because we sued them and a judge said, you guys didn't really get there because you're the ISO, you're not really getting fined by Visa.
Right.
Because they're finding the bank and then the processor, and then they're just pushing it down. And we're like, well, it's dollar for dollar.
Yeah.
So I have to sue Fiserv and the bank? I can't do that.
Right.
It's a death sentence.
Right.
Well, you can sue your processor is fine, but you never sue your bank.
Right.
Or you're done.
Yeah.
So so now when you sold last time, was it I'm out, clean walk, or just some attrition guarantees?
No, I had a business partner. I sold my half the business to my partner.
Okay, great.
Yep.
And so
Then started a new one.
Started a new one and competed with him, and burnt him to the ground. Just kidding. So this time you did things differently. This time you're going, buy me. They bought you. They own you now.
More or less.
I'm just kidding.
Can you talk about that, Paul? I think what you were asking about, James, is you talked about setting this up for your family, right? In the sense of this kind of looking forward. Is that? Can you maybe explain what that looks like?
Yeah. So so my last ISO when I started, and this was like 2014. The idea was I'm gonna run this business forever, which I think, by the way, is a great way to go into a business, because you're laying the groundwork for something real long term.
Yeah, and how do you build a culture around you when you're like, I'm going to be out of here in 5 years. I'm just going to pump this thing up and be done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it translates into how you take care of your employees and how you take care of your customers. And, that long-term vision is I've always skewed more towards long-term than short-term. And I think that employees can feel that, customers can feel that. You're just going to have a better culture in general. But yeah, I again, with my idea of never wanting to lose a customer, I latched onto as much technology as possible and started working with, I really started focusing in the restaurant world, because for me, restaurants, even still, have so much opportunity as far as payments and point of sale, because they just have the most moving parts. So there's the most room for error. And when you really start meeting with a restaurateur about point of sale, they're not utilizing that thing to its most efficient manner, right? Like, it's like the point of sale for a restaurant, if done properly, can become, I always refer to it as a central nervous system. Yeah. It's like the whole business can operate off that thing.
All of your accounting, your scheduling, everything can run off of this, but you're just running credit cards through it like it's a terminal.
Exactly, right. So our model kind of became work with less merchants, but spend more time with them.
Yeah.
Right. And then in restaurants, you can do that because there's generally more volume. They're more profitable.
Yeah.
And so built up a really nice portfolio. And this last year, we were acquired by a company called Exactras out of Texas.
And I've heard only good things about this company. But do you have concerns about, because there's many ways to sell, but you can sell, hit some attrition, keep it up, get the most money, or you can sell and basically partner. But you've been the head honcho for the last 20 years.
That's right.
How are you going to navigate that?
Yeah.
Of, time to show up for work?
Look, that's a great question. It's interesting because the last couple of years I kind of thought, you know what, I do want to sell the company, and I started going down this road. And then once I went down the road, I backed out because almost every company that I talked to, they not only saw value in the business, but they saw value in me attached to this business because they're like, you're a key piece of this business, the way that you build it up. We want you to come with us. And then I'm like, no, I'm out of here.
Right.
And so I started to realize.
Planted the seed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, the acquisition by Exectris made sense not only because of, first of all, the company's been around since 2008.
Right.
They have their core product is a healthcare membership product where they have taken thousands of merchants, hundreds of thousands of customers, and basically taken that buying power to get Fortune 500 level benefits and business services for small businesses.
Oh, cool.
It's phenomenal. And they're growing like mad. They've got a ton of funding. But the culture that they've built, right? They've been around, I think I said, since 2008. They didn't start taking on money just until these last couple of years. And a lot of the people there have been around for years and years. And so it's not an environment where I knew I was going to feel like an employee, where I'm like, checking or coming into a cubicle and clocking in. I very much feel like an entrepreneur within the company, which was important to me because I knew if I was going to have to be an employee, right, then I'm going to be just completely suffocated and freak out, right? So,
or maybe you'd love it because it sounds like you've never really done it.
Well, that's interesting too, right? I'm no longer the guy at the top, so I can make decisions to a certain point, but then.
Perfect. Now it's his fault. And he gets all the credit.
It's a different spin, but you know what? It's actually made me appreciate that other side of things so much, which I've been working for myself for so long. So to be able to appreciate the employee side of things, which is a totally different level of stress, by the way.
Sure.
I actually think that in some senses it's more stressful than being a business owner. It's just two totally different things.
My problem with being, the owner of a business, and I've got a great partner, and to combat what I'm about to say, we actually share an office, even though we've got plenty of space, is you don't really get feedback at the top.
That's right.
And it's a total, just walk around. Everyone, says you're doing great. You're doing great. And so we sit there and we just tear each other down all day.
Yeah.
And pump each other up because no one also says, "Hey, great job." Except for Jeremy says it all the time to me. And
so he knows it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, exactly. It's white noise.
That's a good point. I think that there's employees are generally afraid to bring bad news, right, to the boss and to the owners. And I've always told employees over the years, I'm like, look, you can't hurt my feelings.
Right.
Okay? Like, you just can't. I need to hear what's bad. I will reward you for telling me what's broken.
Yes,
right? Tell me what's broken, what needs to be fixed, where are we screwing up. I don't want to hear like, oh, this is the best place I've ever worked and we're selling the best. Like, tell me I need to know what sucks.
Right. Yeah, because good feedback, like, we're already on that trajectory. I need bad to hammer it down. I think we don't have that problem as much because we do a lot of M&A work. And if something's going wrong, I'm going to know about it pretty quick. And litigation, it's public. The judge, says it and, publicly beats you. So we actually see a lot of it. But I guess, probably everything that goes on in Jeremy's office, we have no idea how much stuff goes wrong down here.
Well, James, to this point, one of the coolest things we did, I think it was a year ago, we did that anonymous survey. Remember for that, I forget what it was, best places to work.
Oh, yeah.
So people were able to give feedback completely anonymously. I think that was kind of cool because we did get some constructive feedback on certain things.
Oh, yeah, we did get some constructive feedback.
So
but then we went and found out who gave it to us.
And they're no longer with us. So.
It wasn't quite as anonymous as...
we did. No.
I just said it's the best place to work ever 30 times on the survey. That's what I said.
Yeah, it's like a Bart Simpson chalkboard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think we actually need to fix that because we didn't win. We won number 42 best place. Got to pump that up. We need better feedback, probably.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so now you're still taking on merchants. You're still hiring ISOs.
That's
You're
right.
a great guy to work for. How do people get in touch with you?
So I have a personal website, paulhadfield.co. Trust me, I've tried to buy paulhadfield.com. The guy's in England. He won't sell it.
He won't sell it.
But .co, paulhadfield.co. Or you can email me at phadfield@exectras.com, EXECTRAS.
Maybe you need to go buy paulhadfield.uk.
That's not a bad
barter
idea.
with him.
That's not a bad idea.
All right.
That's why James makes the big bucks, because of ideas like that.
Yeah, I'm sure he already has it. All right. Well, thanks for coming on. We appreciate you coming down. We'll have to do it again.
Yeah, great conversation. Thank you for listening this long to the Payments Experts Podcast, a podcast of global legal law firm. Today we've had with us Paul Hadfield. You can find him at paulhadfield.co, as well as James Huber, managing partner of the law firm. Thank you, gentlemen, as always. Have a great one.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Payments Experts Podcast, a podcast of global legal law firm. Visit us online today at globallegallawfirm.com.